do you take something really simple and make it simple? Fill flash. Now, I bet you think you know what fill flash means. Because anybody with a camera, what's fill flash? Well, you know, it's like you got a backlit scene. Here's your background, your ambient illumination, and here's your subject, the little baby or the hot chick with her hands on her head. This is not dirty water, I just colored it. What's fill flash? Well, you know, I just got quite a lot of light in my background there. You know, the sun's peeking over the shoulder. And I want to add some fill flash because as it is right now, since I've only got my camera, this is the disparity of dynamic range between my ambient, or typically my background, and my subject matter. Oh goodness. Well, that's what you need a reflector for. Now, most people have an issue with packing around. I got like 20 reflectors over here. Have an issue with packing around a reflector, especially around the streets. A lot of speed lights, however, will fit in your pocket. Now, I bet you think you know what fill flash is. Well, sure, fill flash is just where you add a little flash so you can bring up the subject illumination and have it closer so that there's less disparity between your ambient and your subject. Well, that would kind of be an accurate superficial definition and is true, but do you really know what fill flash is? Fill. So by definition, if I'm going to drop some light on my subject matter, hold on a minute, because I know you think you know what fill flash. Well, I'm going to add some fill flash, and I'm going to get it, you know, yeah, about 60-40, 60% ambient illumination, 40% subject. I'm going to drop a little bit of speed light on my subject. I'm going to raise up the illumination, and that'll give better saturation, contrast, and definition of my subject. Well, that's true, and this is what people think fill flash is. Well, that is what fill flash is. Not exactly, and that's certainly not the limitations of fill flash. Fill flash specifically is to shorten or lessen the disparity between the dynamic range between your highlights, your ambient, your backlit, in a lot of cases, or nearly all cases, well, not nearly all cases, but most cases, that and your subject matter. But what does that give you the option to do? What does a speed light give you the option to do? Well, it's exactly what you said. That's what fill flash is. I'm going to drop some illumination on my subject matter. I'm going to lessen the disparity between my ambient, i.e. my background, or my background to ambient, depending on the composition that you're actually shooting, and my subject. Well, what if the light is really crappy, and it's like 12 noon? And this, of course, is where high-speed sync and ND filters come in play, but you don't necessarily need those to create an amazing effect. Well, you know, the light sucks, but you know, it's going to rain about an hour, so I want to shoot this while we got it. Got the sun, you know, kind of above it. The lighting sucks. Well, what if, and here's the thing, okay, fill light is not simply to fill the subject matter light and bring it up for contrast, saturation, and definition, which is generically accurate but not intrinsically accurate. What if, for example, I wanted to increase my shutter speed or stop down my aperture a little bit, and this is what it gets me to do, because now I've got that 12 noon or 2 p.m. crap lighting. This would be the ambient lighting, right? Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm going to take that crap light and I want to mute it to where it looks something like, you know, evening light. Whether that's ND filter or ND filter in combination with high-speed sync. There we go. Now what I've done is I've taken that crap light, the ambient light, the compositional light surrounding your subject, and I've dropped it down, and now I have something really fantastic. My subject is framed perfectly, the background is muted, it doesn't look like crap. Everybody thinks just fill flash is for just raising up subject illumination. Now, you can't change. And here's the point that people don't get, because people don't get it. Well, it is true that a little speed light, and I don't have a speed light in front of me, even though I've got like 40 speed lights, even though a little speed light don't reach out too far, it's like, you know, my subject's about 15 feet away. That's about the max. Get a little bit further with a really powerful speed light. And that's about it. It's 15, 20 feet max. You know, it's not going to reach out there. What that does is it lets you have control, since your subject is the thing you're actually shooting, lets you have control over your ambient illumination. If you have total control over your subject with the fill flash, specifically the speed light, it'd be great if you could actually go on location with a power pack and a studio strobe. Then it makes all the difference in the world. Then you could really work some magic. But speed light's sufficient enough. 15 feet subject matter, 85 millimeter, fine. It is the case if you're shooting out in a studio, you have complete control over all the lighting. Outdoors, unless you are like a hunter and you're hunting that magical narrow sliver of light early morning, late evening, you're screwed. It's like, well, you know, I've lit my subject perfectly with my fill flash, but the problem is the shot looks compositionally like crap, and all the adjustment in Lightroom and Photoshop are not going to help. You know, it's not going to totally correct it. I can make it look a lot better. When you're able to control your subject illumination, since your subject is all that's important, with that speed light, not change positions, like, well, here she's perfectly framed, this is the background I want, the sun's kind of over there. When you're able to control your subject illumination, please listen carefully, you also control your ambient illumination. That's the disconnect people can't make. It's like, how can a damn little speed light, which only reaches about 15 feet, basically, 20 feet out there, how the hell can that control the background, you know, 10 miles behind her? Obviously the speed light doesn't reach out there. What it lets me do is drop my levels on the crap light or raise them. When you have control of your subject, you also got control of your ambient or your background. Doesn't matter if you say ambient or background. Why don't people make that connection? You got control over one, you got control over the other. Does that make sense? Is that simple enough, using 2 glasses with that colored water? I didn't like drinking that colored water either. I think the glass is dirty. Unless you're hunting the perfect light, which people do, and it is important, if you want to just roll out, it's like it's 2 p.m., the light sucks, it's like, that's it, baby, I control the lighting. I can make whatever happen I want. Well, you know, the only thing you brought was a speed light. It's like, yeah, that's all I need. Well, you know, the speed light, and this is what people think. They just think that way. Speed light for my subject. Well, it is for your subject, but when you have control over your subject, then what you don't see is a speed light is like a second shutter. This is really kind of almost the easiest way to describe it. People think, well, I got shutter and aperture, ISO on my camera. No, you got 2 shutters. Your speed light is a second shutter. That pulse of high concentration, deeply saturating light lets you control your ambient. By that, and through which, you can adjust your camera. First off, step number 1, if you want to work it until you actually figure it out completely, make your subject look however it turns out. Just expose for, take a test shot, set your model over there, whatever the hell it is you're shooting, your dog, your cat, your family. Take a shot and make the ambient look to the exposure of your tastes. Okay, it's like, well, my subject's blacked out now. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. Expose your ambient for where you want. Make sure the shutter speed is within the sync capabilities of your speed light. This is where high-speed sync comes into play. By the way, high-speed sync is like child's play compared to hypersync. Do a Google search. High-speed sync versus hypersync. Hypersync is hardcore pro stuff. Hypersync is a douchebag flash photography because it's just not that powerful. It's pulse light. Expose for your ambient however the hell you want. Doesn't matter what your subject looks like. Then you raise your subject illumination up with your speed light. This is what people don't understand about fill flash, or just a speed light in general. Well, my light sucks. You know, I got a crap load of light here, and I can add, you know, here's my ambient light. You know, it's 2 p.m., the sun's blazing, but this is perfect composition. Well, I could add an ND filter. Yeah, you could. You could, yeah, and that's all fine. However, most ND filters, unless it's a Lee filter, they cause color shift problems, and of course, anytime you add a stinking filter between your light and your sensor, you're just foobarring the image to whatever degree, even with a super expensive Lee filter. I could add an ND filter, I could tamp down the ambient. Yeah, but you don't want to use a filter unless you have to. Here's the point. Expose for your ambient however you want, and then raise your subject, because your camera and your speed light, there's not just shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. There is a second shutter. There's a second shot. It's like a double exposure. You're exposing within, let's say your shot is 1/1000th of a second. That's high speed sync. Let's just say it's 1/250th of a second. Within that, you have two exposures. You have the amount of light that pours in from your ambient at 1/250th of a second, and then based on the T1 time, that's 90% of flash duration. You actually have the exposure for your subject matter to look however you want. Fill flash is much more than just filling in the flash to shorten the dynamic range, or the dynamic range disparity between your subject matter and your ambient. When you control your subject illumination, then, listen closely, you can control your ambient illumination to wherever the hell you want it to be. Up to the point where if you're like, well, I want to shoot at f1.8 or f1.4, and then you want to shoot wide the hell open and it's bright and sunny outside, then you got issues because you need to bump up your shutter speed. So you want to shoot f1.8, 1.4, even at ISO 100 or 64, shooting at f1.8, 1.4, depending on the camera. It's like, well, I can't raise my shutter speed high enough. That's where we're talking high speed sync and hypersync. In addition to which, possibly, if you want to shoot that wide open, possibly, in some instances, an ND filter. There's ways around it. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Now, when you control the flash illumination on one, you control the lighting on everything else, because you're dealing with two different types of lighting. You're dealing with your ambient that you're letting in, and you're letting in at 1/250th of a second, for example, and then you actually have the amount of illumination that you raise up from your speed light, or preferably your studio strobe. I know people don't want to pack around a studio strobe and a power pack and a light stand and an umbrella. I understand that, right? However, you're doing a paid shoot, like wedding or portraiture. You see how small this is? The versatility of this in like an octabox or an umbrella or a beauty dish is 1,000,000,000 times more than the best speed light the money can buy. And more reliable, and more durable, infinitely more powerful, infinitely more versatile. Whew. Why does nobody have a studio strobe? Well, I think a studio strobe is merely for the studio. No, it's not. You grab a power pack, a $10 Chinese light stand, like a $20 umbrella, then you can rock the world. You also, too, if you want to start making money in photography, you got to do the stuff everybody else is a retard on. Oh, excuse me. Everybody else is mentally incapable of. There we go. That's a politically correct term. Most people don't know how the hell to use a studio strobe and a pair of wireless triggers, and they don't know what the hell high-speed sync or hypersync is. Most don't know what hypersync is. And they don't know how the hell to properly expose, raise your subject illumination up, and drop your ambient to wherever you want. It's like, well, I got a limited time, we got to do this portrait shot now. It's like, yeah, but it's 2 p.m. and the lighting sucks. Well, I'm sorry, that's the only time I could do it. If you're a real photographer, you know what the hell to do with your lighting. Everything is about lighting control. It's like, well, I can't control the background illumination that's 5 miles in the background. No, if you have a studio strobe or a speed light, either one, you can control that. Because when you control one, then you have complete control over the other. You just expose for your ambient, and you raise your subject illumination up to wherever the hell it is you feel it's appropriate for the composition that you desire and or the client desires. I hope that was pretty simple. Using 2 glasses of dirty water. Not dirty water, colored water. A little bit of soda pop in there, right? Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, click the link below. Tell me to jump off a cliff. I'm going to warm my hands by the fire. And, someone sent me an email today. They said in the email, they said, "You are disgusting. I hate you. You are so obnoxious and rude and arrogant. Just looking at your face makes me sick." And I said, well, you make a good case there. Maybe you shouldn't watch my videos. I think it was a pretty good answer. What about you? Thanks. Bye. Oh, God.